Previously on the Gaming Lovers Podcast. Because in the next week, we're going to find out all about Persona 5 The Royal, find out exactly what it is, and if it is not exactly what Jem hopes it is, she will be devastated by this time next.
I'll either be annoyingly elated or catatonically depressed. So
Get your bets in, ladies and gentlemen. So, dear, which one is it? Which one is it? The Gaming Lovers Podcast, where we always have a good time.
The Gaming Lovers Podcast with Brendo and Jem.
G'day and welcome to the Gaming Lovers Podcast, episode 54.
Get what you want.
I'm Jem. And that's Brendo.
You're more than Jem. You are sniffly, you are sad, you are depressed, you are broken at heart. I am Brendo. I'm not as nearly as upset as you are with the news of Persona 5 The Royal. Let's get straight into that. Let's just rip that Band-Aid off for you.
No gaming goals,
We'll get there in a second, but you need to face your heartbreaks head on in life. It's the only way to heal. You had high expectations for Persona 5 The Royal, but in a different sense.
Yes. So months ago they released a teaser with this girl with a ponytail who was in the same uniform, and she looked like she could be a female iteration of the protagonist. And so many of us, fan-wise, have kind of wanted another female protagonist iteration ever since the Persona 3 Portable Edition. So, yeah, I wasn't the only one who jumped on that bandwagon. And to my point, when I tweeted a picture that I had found online that someone had drawn, a really cute chibi version of the female protagonist from 3 with this new character from 5, hoping that it would be a new protagonist, like high-fiving each other. That has been my most retweeted, most liked tweet in recent memory.
And you didn't even draw it yourself. You plagiarized and stole someone else's content.
I never said that it was my drawing. I just said, I really want this to happen. I was like, please, let it be true. But it is not.
So we spent a couple of hours the other night streaming the live concert from Japan, the Persona P-Sound Q-Bomb Sound Street 2019. It was some strange name like that. Watching a concert of video game music from one of our favourite series, Persona, and the big reveal of what Persona 5 Persona 5 The Royal, would be.
Yep. So essentially, it's much like Persona 4 Golden, a new character, possibly more being introduced to the party, as well as new content, new events added to the calendar. So figuring out where that's going to fit in gameplay-wise, I think it's going to be added closer to the end of the school year based off the events that you kind of see.
Well, if you think about Persona 4 Golden, Marie was introduced early in that, and she was completely absent from vanilla Persona 4. That was not the actual title. Just trying to establish it was the basic one.
The original, yep. So, look, I am thrilled to have more content, to have more fun and interactions, and to see new things. Like, I will never be sad about having more Persona. I had my expectations on the wrong thing, and that's where I was crushed, because I was so dead set on how amazing it would be, and I still believe it would be very amazing to have that story told, but from that different perspective. I think that would add some really interesting levels, like not like actual gameplay levels, but like as far as like to the story. Anyway.
Therein lies the problem of teasing an announcement, because a trailer, by definition, you give information and show what the project is and what is going to be included, but a teaser sort of just gets the conversation going. And unfortunately, it has happened multiple times in the gaming history that people have taken trailers or teasers the wrong way and built up false expectations to what the actual project is.
Yeah.
Now, there are a lot of people who are very excited about Persona 5 The Royal, myself being one of them.
I will be eventually once I just get over my initial, I think, disappointment. And it's my fault. Like, I will own that's my fault that I had, you know, false expectations. You know, I had built myself up to want that.
Yeah.
It's not as if they had teased that this was going to be that and then changed it.
Mm-hmm.
I just assumed, and we know what happens when you do that.
And you were not the only one who assumed
No.
things either.
No. Thankfully, I was not alone, at least, in this, but yeah, so I'm just a little bit tender this week as far as having to let that go, and a part of me hopes that down the road or the next Persona game, or however long we're going to have to wait for that one, but that they will at least let you choose and have more than one, or at least customize your protagonist. I would really love that.
Well, while you were not the only one to get their hopes up about a female protagonist that did not come to fruition, the other reveal was also Persona 5S. On the second night of the P-Sound Q-Bomb Sound Street Persona
Yes.
Live Super Concert 2019 EX Plus Alpha.
Everyone thought it would be a Switch port.
Yes.
And it's technically coming to the Switch, but it's not the full game of Persona 5, which the funny reaction is all of the like Nintendo fanboys and girls that like are like hardcore Nintendo fans and don't really play anything outside of that wheelhouse were grumbling that Joker got added to Smash Bros.
He's not even on a Nintendo console. He's
Yeah.
it's ridiculous.
And then when the news hit that it wasn't going to be a Switch port of Persona 5, they're like, oh, but we wanted the game. So, I guess I feel a bit mean kind of making fun of other people who didn't get their expectations met either, when I'm kind of sitting in the same boat, just kind of adjacent from them for a different thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the...
Persona 5S is going to be Persona 5 Scramble,
Yes.
a action RPG-ish made by the developers of Dynasty Warriors and Hyrule Warriors. Zelda got this treatment a few years ago. The same gameplay style as the other series, Dynasty Warriors, but with the Zelda characters, settings, abilities, characters, enemies. We're going to have the same thing, but at the Scramble Crossing
in Shibuya.
Perfect. Where
So
else
that's
would
where
you
the
fight?
S comes from Scramble.
Scramble?
Scramble. I said Scramble.
Sounded like Scramble.
Scramble.
Scrambled eggs. Sorry.
So, yeah, it doesn't look bad, but it was not what people had their thing set on. So that
Yep.
seems to be the theme
Plenty
from all
of-
the announcements.
Plenty of people saying, this is garbage, where's my Switch port? And a Switch port was never promised. That's what people don't understand. It's not like they said, oh, we're working on it, it's coming soon, but this project isn't it. And then they'd say, where is it? Mm-hmm. But this game is coming to the Switch, Persona 5 Scramble, Persona 5 The Royal, interestingly, PS4 exclusive for now. So, there you go. You can't always get what you want.
No.
But if you are like us and have the money to run yourself into debt loving games, then we have all the consoles. It doesn't bother us. And if you start saving your pennies now for a PlayStation 5, quote unquote, it'll be backwards compatible. So you can play it on that. See?
Yes.
There's always an opportunity.
And seriously, in this day and age, I can't imagine not having the main staple consoles because, like, there's just, especially the PlayStation has so many great exclusives.
Yeah.
And to not have access to that, I can't imagine. Yeah, you'd miss out on so much great stuff. Anyway, I think it's time for some gaming goals. Let's move on from my disappointment and into this week's and what we have played.
Gaming goals, gotta play 'em all. Gaming goals. I don't know why I'm singing this song, 'cause I didn't play any Pokemon. I'll stop that.
How high pitch were you getting?
I was doing pretty well, considering
No.
that's not normally my range at all. I thought that was literally going to be a bad take, and I tried again, and I like it, so we're keeping it in. Don't know why I went for the Pokemon theme song, since I didn't play any Pokemon this week, but... Speaking of taking quotes, last week we weren't sure if you'd be a happy gem or a sad gem. Quote from me last week, I vowed on my name, on my honour, that I would have Sekiro Shadows Die Twice beaten. Beaten!
And?
Credits rolled!
And?
I'm victorious.
Victorious.
I have done it. I have done it, and the final
Well
boss
done.
almost made me pull what few strands of hair are left on the top of my head out of my scalp. But I did it. And one boss that I got up to, I was up to 2 simultaneous bosses, one in the main game and one in like the memory world, and I was stuck on the one in the memory world for so long, I had left it in the real world up to a certain boss fight, and that boss was pathetic. So I really should have just steamrolled through that one and felt like got some victory out of it. I'm still being elusive because of spoilery things, but it's in the clouds, there's some lightning involved, and it was pretty good, but far easier than I expected, especially after batting my head against the one I was stuck on. But Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, I can give my full verdict now. What would you like to know?
What do you rate it out of 10?
7. No, higher than a 7. I just wanted to shock yourself. I would... I'm hesitant to give it 9 or higher. It's just something didn't quite click as well.
So like an
as
8.5 then?
8.5. It's still a good score. I enjoyed Bloodborne more. It clicked better. I think the camera in particular in Sekiro was the bane of my existence at certain points. I loved the combat. I loved the fact that I could get better at it with practice, with timing. By learning from my mistakes, you can learn those skills. It's not too basic that it's just button mashing. It's not too difficult that it's impossible. You can learn. You can get better. So if you are listening to this podcast and you are stuck in Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, do what I did and increase your skills and or cheese a boss by watching a cheat video online. And find an exploit.
And fight it with your ninja stench. There was a video, what was it for, like this fire demon thing?
The demon of hatred.
Yes. And the video is hilarious, by the way. I feel like we need to link that on our social media page because it's just, I can't do it justice. And he shows how rather than having to take this guy out in combat, if you kind of lure him to one spot, he'll get stuck. And then you can safely climb a building and then get to the rooftop corner and he will try to swing at you and fall off the edge of the cliff. It's so entertaining to watch, and it definitely feels cheap, but at the same time there's something really satisfying about having an easy exit in a game like that.
There are some people, my good buddy the Falcon being one of them, where he looked at, as soon as he reached a boss, he was looking at strategies online to make sure he didn't get stuck on anything too long, to breeze through those tough obstacles as smoothly as possible. I opted to butt my head against a brick wall instead and do it out of sheer stubbornness. But New Game Plus, I'm allowing myself to look at some of these cheaty ways of beating certain things, so there's no shame in that. Tyrannicon is that YouTuber. Unexpectedly funny because I'd never watched anything on his channel before. He has a great deal of content and I found it quite amusing to watch in my downtime this week.
Fight it with your ninja stench.
That really tickled you, didn't it?
It really did. I love that. I love just coming up to you and being like, so what have you beaten with your ninja stench today? As far as my gaming week, I am into Mass Effect 3 and have gotten kind of close to the end of that first third because they're kind of split into acts almost. There's key points where things kind of shift on the Citadel and things in the story. And I know, like, this game's been around for a while and I could probably say specifics, but just in case there are people who haven't played it and want to, I don't want to spoil it for them.
Yeah, well, it's the same with Avengers Endgame, which we've seen. I mean, it's been out for long enough. We can give spoilers on this podcast, right? Hashtag don't spoil the Endgame.
I've also played a little bit of Stardew Valley, and I stress, like, a little bit. I downloaded a new mobile game, which I think you hate now because you told me to download it jokingly, and It's an idle tap game. If
We
you don't
all
know...
think back to our greatest mistakes in life. This might be in the top 3 for me. Was recommending you download a game with Gudetama, the
Gudetama!
lazy egg.
And so it's an idle tap game, which literally just means you are just tapping your finger idly, and that's how you play the game.
It's how you get points.
Yes. And you're cooking different versions of this lazy egg in all these different cute forms. It's very cute. It's very pointless. It's
Everything that I hate in gaming.
And I have it on my iPad while we'll be watching something, and I'll just be like tapping. And I've got to the point where I can kind of just slightly wiggle my finger and not even feel like I'm doing anything or controlling it. And it will just be going and racking up points, and it drives Brendo bonkers.
I regret ever saying, "Oh, look, it's Gudetama. Press it. Because that's now all you do is press it.
It's not all I do. So, and the more points you collect, the more recipes you can cook, and it's a never-ending saga. So that has been my mobile game of the week, if you can even call it a game. I don't think I could. There's zero challenge or skill required. And finally, you made me play something terrible. And it wasn't Gudetama.
What would you rather play? No, I'm just kidding. Don't even go
Gudetama
there.
is actually rated quite highly on the store. This rate's way higher than what you made me play. Brendo made me play. You remember last week was his birthday and it was all about Sonic.
Oh, I remember. It was the best podcast ever for me.
Followed through with your threat of making me play Sonic Boom. Rise
you play.
of Lyric, yes.
Threat.
Yes.
Extortion.
I nearly threw up from the bad camera work, and oh my goodness, just even thinking about it, I feel like lightheaded and nauseous.
Well, save your vomit for later, because we're going to talk in depth about the 10 worst games on GameRankings.com average review scores. That's pretty bad. We're talking low 20s, something you don't see often with video game review scores. But finally, before we get there, I've played a little dabble of Stardew Valley as well. A couple of days, still in winter, not quite finished with my first year through, but I was so proud of myself that I caught a largemouth bass, which meant I could have dinner with Jody. And I actually did it. That fish took me forever to catch. That's not a very exciting story, but I was proud of it last night, and I felt good. Just wanted to share my little achievement with you all.
Congratulations. Fishing is still hard in that game.
There's some fish that I literally have no idea how I'm ever going to catch them because they're so erratic.
You're just eventually going to have to build up your fishing skill, that the bar that you use to keep the thing in
Like 80% of the
is
range.
Just fills the entire meter, so it doesn't matter where they go, you're going to catch them.
But apart from that, I have also been doing some auditions this week. Auditioning games that I may take on our long-haul flights. Now, we're going to be discussing that in an upcoming podcast because it's an important topic, but that's also what I've been playing this week. A couple 5-minute sessions here and there on certain handheld consoles, just sort of seeing who's qualified to be brought along for the ride.
Fair enough.
But I don't want to give away too much about that or Endgame, so let's move on to our main topic right after this.
Share the love. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/thegaminglovers.
Now, part of my ritual when I'm scouting out whether a game should be worth buying or not, and I don't want too many spoilers, don't want to read individual reviews, whether they're from trusted websites or random ones that you find online.
Or random podcasts like us that you listen to.
We check out GameRankings.com and get an average review score. They compile, sort of like Metacritic, but I've always been part of the GameFAQs.com family, of which this is. And average review scores. That way it doesn't let personal bias fit into the equation. If you have someone who gives it a 10 and someone gives it an 8, your average is a 9. It's in between. It's perfect. It all works out well. Now, one of my favourite things to look at is the top 10 best games list. You can sort that by all-time best and get a feel for where the setting of trends was in the gaming scope of the timeline of history of all games, where the good ones fit in. But even more fun sometimes is to look at the all-time worst. And we have, in detail this week, we've been doing quite a bit of research of watching atrocious video games in action, and we thought we would share the 10 worst average review scores on GameRankings.com.
So you can look at the website if you want and follow along. We're going to count down from 10 to the number one worst ranked video game of all time. Starting in at number 10, sitting at 33.15% in rankings with a total of 20 reviews, is Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, the game that Brendo made me play and made me sick.
Sonic! Oh, what have you done?
Yep. Well, it's this is gonna sound really mean, but it shouldn't be all that surprising to see a Sonic game on the worst video game list.
Yeah, statistics say there should be at least one.
And there is. Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric is. It's kind of surprising and a little sad that it did so poorly when you have ex-Naughty Dog developers working on this game.
Well,
let that sink in.
if you've heard the story behind the development, it's a little more excusable. They started developing a game without knowing what it was going to be. So they just started creating worlds. And then they were told, you have to use this engine, Cry Engine. Use that to make the game.
Something, seriously, when someone tells you you have to use this engine, it never ends well for anyone.
But then they started to make the game, and then they said, oh, you're making it with the Sonic characters, by the way. And they're like, oh, okay. I guess we're just making a cooperative game, but that's fine. We can put Sonic in there. And then they're like, oh, it has to be on the Wii U. So, we've promised Nintendo you get X amount of exclusive Sonic games. This one's got to be on the Wii U. And they're like, this engine doesn't run on the Wii U very well.
Those poor guys. And also they redesigned the whole look of the Sonic team, which when that first got, like that teaser photo got announced, caused a bit of a ripple through the community of, oh, what have they done to Knuckles?
I hated it at first, but I kind of like muscle-bound stupid Knuckles.
Yeah.
He is probably the funniest character on the Sonic Boom animation.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the dialogue not so witty in the video game.
No. The animation, I mean, it's hit and miss at times too, but it's still far better than the video game. But you can see like hints of Naughty Dog as far as having like an adventure game and having that feel of discovering a tomb and the puzzles and the like, and even with the neckerchief around Sonic's neck. Feels very Naughty Dog Uncharted-esque to me. So those little elements come through. I think as far as the character design, the voice acting, the animation in like the cutscenes themselves in the game, all pretty solid. The gameplay itself, unfortunately, oh my goodness. As I mentioned earlier, the camera work, like it tracks you, like because it keeps on Sonic or whoever you're playing as, because you can switch. But it's so jarring and flips around on you, and it's just infuriating and nauseating all at once.
Every little twitch you make with the left stick controlling your character, the camera will move as well. And if there's a zigzag line of rings and you're trying to follow that, the camera is going to be swinging left and right erratically. Now, I'm not a person who gets motion sick playing video games. Occasionally, if I'm trying to use my phone to read an article or something while someone else is driving erratically, or even not erratically, I start to feel a little nauseous in the head. That doesn't happen to me with video games. A lot of people get that with first-person shooters or if there's certain bad frame rates, but in this case, it happened to me, an expert long-term gamer, and I started to feel sick from this camera work. And it's not just the camera that's bad. That can definitely be a negative factor in your enjoyment of the game, but the gameplay, no matter which style it's using, is abysmal.
The combat, when there is combat, is so basic. And you know it's basic if I'm saying it's basic. Like, one button mash, there's really not much threat or feel of danger ever. You've got infinite lives too, so there's nothing really that makes you feel like, oh, I bet I have to survive or I'm going to have to do this whole thing again, which would probably just annoy people even more though, truly, if you did die that easy. The running sections are kind of like rail shooters, so all you have to do is really dodge. So there's not much variety in those bits.
But the frame rate can't keep up at some points, which means you run into obstacles you had no idea were even coming.
Yeah, or it gets blurry.
And the fact that in normal gameplay, I think Ratchet from Ratchet and Clank could outrun Sonic the Hedgehog. That's probably not what you're here for. It's a game that's not even a Sonic game, but with Sonic characters.
Yeah, pretty much. There's puzzle sections which really slow it down, and they're not challenging. They're just jump on this button, smash this wall, or climb this with this way. And it is ultra basic, and I think it was maybe designed for much younger people to play, but I wouldn't want to have like a kid's first experience of Sonic games be that.
Don't put that evil on them.
Exactly. There's if they're going to play a platforming game, there are so many better options out there. Unfortunately. And if you want them to love Sonic, then that's not what you use to introduce them to Sonic.
Well, steer clear of this one, Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. It's a game where you can just simply fall through the floor walking through a large open blank area. Gigantic hub worlds that are completely lifeless and empty of any actual personality.
Your side characters that you're supposed to be switching between will just suddenly vanish. Lots of fun little bugs like that.
And they never shut up.
Yes, lots of...
You love party banter, don't you?
I do, but if it's repetitive party banter, like the same lines, like every time you do a certain action, and they keep saying that same line about that action over and over again, that is infuriating. So that's the kind of thing that would make me want to hit mute, even on talented voice actors like Craig Roger Smith.
Mm-hmm. Now, Sonic has had a history of bad games, so when a bad game comes out, it's not that surprising, really.
And weirdly, it doesn't kind of hurt its brand.
But when you have a series that is beloved and has hit home run after home run, and then they release an absolute stinker in comparison to their own games, as is the case with Activision trying to rekindle the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater number 5.
In at number 9 at 32.96%. With 27 reviews, so not great at all. But then that's the trend for this whole list. So
now, you have some history with the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series?
I do. I played quite early. I don't know if it was 1 or 2. It was on the Nintendo 64. And loved that game. It wasn't my game. That was actually my best friend at the time, his game.
Gosh, you and your best friends and your cousins and your neighbour and your dog and
that was how you gamed back then. If you couldn't afford the games, you would swap amongst your mates. And if you didn't have the option to play online with friends, you had to go over to each other's houses and then they'd borrow a game and never give it back. Logan, I want my Pokemon Yellow back.
Where is it?
I don't know.
Go hunt it down.
He probably doesn't know.
Where does he live now?
He lives in New Mexico.
All right, that might be a problem.
So, yeah, we would play that. We'd take turns. I think there was a multiplayer, like, split screen on the Nintendo 64. But anyway, it has come a long way since then. The graphics certainly have changed. The fashion have changed and grown up with the series. The one thing I can say that I like about Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5 is being able to put the skin of Octodad on.
Octodad! If you talk skaters, of course you think of floppy, boneless octopus men.
Honestly, that would probably make this game way more palatable if you had to play with those controls. That would be way better. But yeah, it is very amusing seeing Octodad skateboarding around. But unfortunately, Pro Skater 5, there are a lot of problems like with the mapping of controls of going from grinding to a stomp being mapped to the same button. And so it doesn't always register what you want to do. And so if you want to continue grinding along a rail and then it makes you stomp and then it messes up a sequence you're doing, that's very frustrating.
Games like this live or die by their controls. They have to have responsive, understandable controls that work well. The physics of the actual where you can grind, where you can jump, have to work well. This game falls apart at all of those checkpoints.
The maps as well, unfortunately. A lot of the levels are really bland. They could probably do with a bit of quirkiness here and there. Like, not every map has to be...
Dark and grimy and grungy.
Well, they've gone for realism for the most part, but you could have a couple of quirky levels in there. I mean, you've got Octodad, for goodness sake. Have an Octodad level.
Hey, that's a real thing. I'm sure there's been multiple people you've met in your life that are actually octopus men in disguise, and you've just never noticed because their disguise was flawless.
How does anyone understand him? Anyway, I want to start talking about Octodad now.
But the good thing with Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5, darling, online multiplayer.
Ah, yes.
Just what we need.
That's what you want, slowing down the frame rate even more.
And the loading screens and the collision detection and everything else that you want to have in a good game. Let's just sacrifice it all for the sake of multiplayer.
Mm-hmm. In at number 8 on the worst ranked video games of all time, McFarlane's Evil Prophecy, sitting at 32.95% with 25 reviews.
32.95.
That's what you get from Konami in 2004. So this came out on the PlayStation 2, and basically, sadly, like many video games, I guess you could say, from certain franchises, was made to help sell toys and linked with toys. So all the characters in this game are based off of toys. And so if you loved the toys, you would get a nostalgic kind of kick out of it.
You keep saying toys. They're like figurines, not toys. The children would not be playing with McFarlane's horror figures. But maybe they are. Maybe that's what's wrong with this generation. There was a game that played similar but far better on the original Xbox that I played called Hunter the Reckoning. Gameplay is very similar. You are a character, you attack a horde of people, almost like in a Final Fight style but in a 3D world. You know, you've got to get through the mobs to get to your objectives, and it's basically just a brawler. That's the sort of game that I call a brawler. This game has you going at about walking pace the entire time. The enemies go at walking pace. You just sort of collide with each other and swing your weapons, and there's your gameplay loop. I hope it's enjoyable.
Now, it's got a bit of a cult following, and again, I think that comes from people that love the figurines. Sorry, I'll say figurines now. Is that better? But, yeah, it's just the dialogue and everything else. It's a culmination of mess.
Bad dialogue, bad animations, bad content as far as the actual plot.
And gameplay, the combat is such a mess. It's such a mess.
Very little rewarding. There are games that have done this far better. Imagine if you played Devil May Cry, but Dante was like an 86-year-old geriatric male who moved at that speed with that amount of power, and his enemies were a mob of the same. It would run faster than what this game does. How's that for an analogy?
Let's move on. In at 7.
1 second. Did you say Konami made this?
Yes.
You saying Konami makes bad games? Bad business decisions?
Let's not go there.
I'm shocked.
In at number 7, sitting at 29.18% with 20 reviews. On the DS, Ping Pals. I had never heard of this game before until we started doing research for this.
Well, there's a reason for that, I believe. Oh, no, we did get it.
We got it in Australia? Okay, so Ping Pals, it's kind of like an online chat simulation against an AI. And I can't think of anything else to explain about this game. It just looks horrendously boring.
All right, well, you and I both had early DSs, and we enjoyed PictoChat.
True.
PictoChat, we would send messages to each other, we would draw pictures to each other, and make each other laugh from opposing sides of the room when we had a family get-together.
Yep.
Not that I was part of the family at that point.
No.
But you understand the concept.
Yes.
Imagine that, but you have to pay for the program, because PictoChat came built into the DS. This game had the same concept, but you had to buy it, and yet it wasn't anywhere near as good. You know you're in trouble when the official Nintendo magazine give a Nintendo game 9% as its review score.
Oh, 9%.
The biggest complaint I used to have about specific brand magazines is that they would always be biased towards their brand. You buy a PlayStation magazine, PlayStation games are the best. This game's fantastic. It's an exclusive on PlayStation. Yeah, it's not the best game, but we give it a good score because it's a PlayStation exclusive. Same thing. You expect Nintendo games to get Nintendo scores on Nintendo magazines, and to give your own product a 9%. They said, with PictoChat coming as standard, this feels like paying money to breathe air.
It's like canned air. What was it in Spaceballs? So funny. In at number 6 from the Xbox 360 with 29.16% over 25 reviews. Rogue Warrior. Thanks from Bethesda Softworks.
No. Don't tell me Bethesda had their hands in something that was glitchy and unplayable.
Hey, to be fair, this is way worse.
Well, in their defense, they were the publisher, not the actual developer. But Rebellion Entertainment have no excuses for making possibly the single most generic first-person shooter you could possibly imagine.
I love, though, it's kind of one of those games that is so bad that it's kind of good in a funny way. Had it been maybe even released kind of deliberately as kind of poking fun at the genre, it could have done way better. But you've got the main guy voiced by Mickey Rourke, so enough said.
You know what you're in for as far as range and character development there.
But the ragdoll physics hilarious because they look so stiff when like people get hit by grenades and things like that. But the dialogue is so over the top cheesy that it's funny. And delivered so poorly that it's funny. You know what I mean? Like, it hits that sweet spot that makes me chuckle.
Yeah, when you have a game that's so, like, Deadly Premonition, for example. Now, it's a horror game, so you know which combination of people played that. Myself and my good buddy the Falcon. That game is broken beyond repair. It is horribly put together. We had a barrel of laughs playing it because it was so bad that it was good. Occasionally, that happens. Occasionally, though, you get a game that's so bad, it's bad. And this is one of them. You have broken, easily exploited AIs. You're never really in jeopardy because your health regenerates as soon as you're undercover. What more could you want in a first-person shooter than bad combat, bad AI, bad controls, bad plot, Mickey Rourke, and a character named Dick that you play as?
How appropriate.
To be honest, when I did see Rogue Warrior on the list, my brain freaked out because I thought of the indie game Rogue Legacy and got the two confused. I'm like, no, that's a great game. How did that review so badly? Thankfully, I had my wires crossed.
In at number 5, at 27.83% with 20 reviews.
Yeesh.
Imagine this. Metal Gear Solid meets Batman.
Oh my gosh, that would be the best game ever.
But it's not, because it's number 5. Batman Dark Tomorrow.
Oh, this sounds like a home run idea. You take the original Metal Gear Solid gameplay, throw in Batman and his gadgets. I mean, that's what Metal Gear Solid's all about, right?
Well, it would be
Stealth,
better if
gadgets?
like a lot of the gadgets worked. That's one of the issues in that game, is very problematic, very janky, very you've got like a plethora of gadgets as Batman does, but most of them don't work.
Well, okay, so the gadgets don't work that well, but the stealth should be good. It's Batman, you're sneaky, shadow to shadow, diving between, darting like a Black Panther between two things. That's a different superhero. I probably shouldn't have said Black Panther if I was trying to use a DC example. That was not a... Anyway. There's no recovering from that.
There really isn't.
But we're talking about a bad game, so there's some grace here. Have you seen the speed Batman sneaks at in this game?
No, I haven't actually. I just remember the gliding. Oh.
We'll get to the gliding in a second.
Okay.
Hitman 2 used to frustrate me. I loved Hitman games, but the sneak in that was so darn slow. You would be seen before you crossed a hallway. Batman goes about the half the speed of that when he sneaks in this game to try and stealth up behind an enemy. It feels like the enemies walk faster than Batman sneaks. He's Batman. He should move like a silent, greasy...
Ninja?
greasy ninja. I don't know why I say greasy. I mean, just sliding across the floor.
That's one way, though, to eliminate the sound of footsteps.
Okay, admittedly, sneaking around, maybe not Batman's strong suit, but he's a brawler. He can handle fighting multiple enemies at once,
No,
right?
not in this game. Oh my goodness. He sells like a wrestler. He takes one little hit and he goes bump to the floor. It's hilarious.
And therein lies the stun lock, which
Yes.
everybody loves in good gameplay, where you get hit, knocked down. As soon as you stand up, the enemy's timed up their attack to hit you at the instant you get back up. No invincibility frames. You're back on your back again on the floor, and you stand up right into another attack.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
And in boss fights too, you've got a lot of just frustrating moments. And I think one of the more entertaining ones, I guess, is having Joker like laughing at you because you're constantly being on your back. It seems appropriate, really, that he's just cackling in the background, seeing Batman constantly knocked down. I get knocked down.
I get up again, because I'm the Cape Crusader. I get knocked down. But this is just a musical episode at points, isn't it? Good stuff. Yeah, the hang gliding, as you said, Batman, especially in the Arkham games, getting from A to B using your gliding ability. Fantastic stuff.
Fun.
In this one,
No.
no, not so much.
Delete. Terrible.
Poor Batman.
Yeah.
He's had better. There is absolutely no excuse why you should go for 2003's Batman Dark Tomorrow on the Nintendo GameCube. Stay clear of that one.
Yes.
You're listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. Want to join the conversation? Visit thegaminglovers.com. Record your comment or question by clicking on the button on the right-hand side. And you could be featured in the next podcast.
Okay, in at number 4, this one's I feel like I need to put a disclaimer here, because we generally don't talk about these type of games because we are not explicit on the Gaming Lovers podcast.
We will deal with this tastefully
Yes.
and graciously.
As much as we can. I don't know how much we can. On the Xbox 360, sitting at 26.8% with 20 reviews, Leisure Suit Larry, box office bust.
Oh, so there's a pun there
Yes.
about
chests.
bust.
Yeah.
Box office bust.
Yep. These games were, I guess, the closest you could get to anything really erotic at that time. Like, that was the outlet for, I imagine, guys like you when
You're
you're
imagining.
teenagers. Like, look,
Hey,
this is not an area I have not played these games, and the snippets that I've watched purely, and it sounds seedy saying I did it for
Keep
research
digging.
purposes, and
Keep digging.
you know, there's lots of puzzles and silly goofiness and everything else, but at the end of the day, that's not the reason why most guys play this game.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest complaint when we were looking through like reviews for this was that it didn't have all the nudity that the previous ones had.
Well, that's just it, right? Now, you say this is a sort of game series that teen Brendo would like, and to be fair, it started. The series started in 1987,
True.
so it was a bit before my time. Now, having said that, I have played the first Leisure Suit Larry game
What
in
a
my
shock.
teens, so probably shouldn't surprise people. Do you know what was really funny about the first Leisure Suit Larry games? There was no way to... there was no real video game classification boards or anything like that. So to ensure that you were adult enough to play a Leisure Suit Larry game, they would have like a history quiz before you could start playing.
Ooh.
It would ask you, like, which of the following countries is not a part of the USSR or whatever. Or, you know, I don't know.
That's going back a
probably
while.
Doesn't even make sense. But, so, like, questions. Just weird geography, history questions that you had to answer. There was no Googling back then.
They should totally put that on adult sites as a way to look kids out.
Well, the problem is you can Google stuff these days, so that's sort of...
True.
It wouldn't take long. I thankfully had an encyclopedia set that could get me through the security walls, so I was using those for
You
the best
had to
possible
earn
reasons.
your pixelated nudity.
Now, to be fair, you hang on a second.
Oh my goodness, why are we even discussing this? The things that come up on this podcast.
Despite being known for the lewd content, it gained a reputation for not featuring as much sexual material as expected, okay?
Yes.
It was a adventure game. You would walk, you could control where your character walked. If you wanted to interact with something, you had to type what actions you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Whether to look at something, to talk something, what we would say, to pick up an item. And as such, just like games like Space Quest or Monkey Island or whatever, they were incredibly difficult to do without a guide.
Yeah.
So, although I played the first Leisure Suit Larry, I didn't get very far. It took me more time to actually hack the security system to get in with my history research than I actually got to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as years have gone on, the tastes of gamers have matured a bit.
Yeah.
The levels of what's crass has sort
Definitely.
of changed a bit, but also the funniness of smut humour has certainly changed, and as a result, poor Leisure Suit Larry has been left behind. They
Thank
think
goodness.
they're being funny, and really they are just doing nothing but schoolyard boob jokes, and that's about it.
Yeah. I'm kind of grateful that that level of humor has shifted now.
Yeah.
That people, yeah. Because it was never something that I liked, but then I wasn't the target demographic anyway.
The two golden rules for games: Sonic should really never have transitioned to 3D gaming, and Leisure Suit Larry does not work in a politically correct world environment.
The irony is, like, if you probably went back and looked at those early games, the level of nudity, I imagine, I'm speculating here, is probably equivalent to what you could see in some games now that just have, like, a mature storyline as far as romance scenes in games from Heavy Rain to Mass Effect and the like.
6,000% true.
So you just see, and the same is true with like the ratings on movies and TV shows. Yeah, the level of what M or MA will have in it now versus what it used to be. Like you look at an MA from when I was a kid, and that is like almost like PG-13 these days.
We had a bad movie night with a group of friends where we all went out and sought out the worst low-budget movie we could find. I picked a PG-rated movie called Martians Go Home, which was terrible, and that had boobs.
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked. A PG movie. Anyway, at least Leisure Suit Larry obviously has good gameplay or something redeeming. No?
No.
Is there a reason why it's the 5th worst game or whatever we're down to? The 4th?
Number 4.
Oh, look, he's exceeded even himself.
It's the graphics aren't great. The gameplay is not that great. It's lacking in a lot of areas. So I feel unqualified to be saying any more about it, though, having never played it.
I'm just trying not to make too many innuendos about you saying how Leisure Suit Larry just can't perform as well as he should.
Okay, in at number 3 from the Xbox 360 with 25.81% in review scores, 26 reviews total.
Ouch.
Amy. A game that looks like it should be good.
From screenshots, this would look exactly like my ideal game to sit down and play with my good buddy the Falcon.
Mm-hmm. Survival horror. You play as Lana, who is tasked with looking after a little girl named Amy. And that's like the general gist of getting through the game and surviving. But it sucks.
A little bit of hide and seek action of trying to evade enemies, a little bit of melee combat, which is pretty standard in a lot of survival horror games.
Mm-hmm.
Not all of them use guns. This doesn't look like it really uses guns.
No, Amy has some sort of superpower, a psychic ability of sorts. And you can switch between playing as Lana and Amy, although the controls are very fickle. So when you're playing a survival horror game and you need to be able to react fast, you don't want fickle controls.
We said before, Tony Hawk relies on precise control inputs. Survival horror, a badly timed run, either in through a doorway or into the wall next to the doorway, can be the difference between life and death. You want good controls, you want reliable frame rates, you want a combat system where you understand the rules.
Mm-hmm.
You know that if you attack and an enemy blocks, you've mucked up your timing. Or if they attack and you don't dodge, you've mucked up your timing. But when you attack an enemy and they will either just not register it or they will dodge backwards as if they have psychic precognition of when you're going to attack, it just doesn't seem fair. You want a fair set of rules to play by.
And the sad thing is that the voice acting is just so inconsistent as well. And poor acting in a game that's got a strong narrative, and that's like part of what is supposed to make the game great. If that's weak, can destroy it.
I will play a bad game for a good story or good performances in the story. Good characters.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's a bad game with bad characters, bad story, and bad acting, why would you even bother?
Mm-hmm. And there are some games that have fun gameplay, but the acting is so bad that I sometimes I literally can't sit there and listen to it anymore. I'm like, nope. So, I mean, everyone's different. Everyone has things that they can't deal with, and that is kind of their like deal breaker, I guess, as far as games. And that's one for me is if it sounds red or just completely the wrong tone or nonsensical or just yeah. So unfortunately, Amy is a mishmash of all the things you don't want to have happen in a game.
One of my little pet peeves in games is when you have an obstacle that you're just like, just climb over it. It's like a knee-high box. Why can't I go through this hallway? And when you have a ventilation gap to send the child through, which is big enough for probably a fat man to crawl through, and yet Lana can't go in as well.
She doesn't want to ruin her clothes.
Oh my gosh, get them dry cleaned after the fact. You're going to get blood on them anyway.
Right.
Oh, goodness.
Lots of things like that in the game. Number 2, in the worst video games of all time from GameRankings.com, at 24.68% with 31 reviews.
Oof.
Yeah. On the Xbox One.
Oh, a recent game.
Yep. Fighter Within. A fighting game, but wait for it, on the Kinect.
Oh.
That's your mistake, mate.
Just about anything on the Kinect has not been
Ubisoft.
enjoyable. I have tried. I have given the Kinect the benefit of the doubt. Any new technology has its issues.
Yeah.
So I give it some time for developers to release games later on and try those instead. Now, by the time the Xbox One was released, we were in the second version of the Kinect. They should have worked out all the technical aspects. They should have worked out what gameplay works, what doesn't work.
Should have.
Should have is correct because they did not. A fighting game, another game series, another game genre that requires precise timing and input.
Yeah. And sometimes the moves that they'd have you do could be used for more than like one thing, so it would get confused. You don't always know if what you're posing for is actually going to do the move you want it to do. The menu itself, and like with any other Kinect game, and this is why I really hated Kinect, was so unreliable. Like you'd be trying to like push your hand forward as a way to press the button on the TV,
but the Kinect would detect your hand going up instead of forward towards it. It thinks you're moving it up, and therefore it's moved off the thing you were trying to select.
Incredibly frustrating. You could spend like half an hour trying to just start a match before you even get to gameplay. So, and that's no hyperbole, it's legit just frustrating. So it's amusing to watch people play Kinect. It's always been something we drag out more just so we can laugh at our friends look like idiots.
I'm not really one for imbibing in alcohol, but I'm sure if you were quite a few drinks deep, having the guys together for a Kinect tonight would be a recipe for disaster.
Oh my goodness.
For starters. Injuries would rack up, but the laughs I'm sure would be there too.
It's like that VR game with the drunk ragdoll. What was it?
Bar fight.
Bar fight. So funny. Need more games like that.
The problem is with this game as well, you have input lag from the Kinect trying to read your actions.
Mm-hmm.
You can only throw an enemy if they are blocking. And so you see the enemy block and you try to do the throw move and it detects your right hand moving faster than your left, so it does a punch instead. And then you finally get the throw, and by the time you've registered the throw hold, the enemy's not blocking anymore, so it doesn't work.
Yeah. No, it definitely, I mean, one of those ideas that sounded kind of cool maybe in a boardroom when they're pitching things that they can have as a Connect exclusive. What's going to get people moving? And it sounds like, oh, a fighting game. People would love to do the kung fu moves. But in practicality and execution, it's horrendous.
Why wouldn't you just actually just say, let's not even bother playing this, let's just actually fight? It might be more enjoyable.
Yes. It's less painful to go and physically get beaten up than try to play this game.
Now, surely at least, even if the gameplay itself is bad, they've got a good cast of characters to choose from?
Most fighting games, no offense to fighting games, but there's very few fighting games that have good cast or story, to be honest.
Kiss my butt, Soul Calibur's awesome.
I didn't say all of them. I said that there's a lot that don't, like the story aspects and that aren't, that's not what you're there for. So that aspect to me, it's not great, but that to me is kind of on par with a lot of other fighting games.
Okay, well, how about the delivery of the voice work? You're an expert in voice acting.
Oh, really? I'm the expert.
You are an expert. It's your actual job.
I suppose that's true. It was bad. It was, but it was over the top bad. Kind of what you expect from those kind of games. I believe some of the spelling, like the captions and stuff that they have below as you're reading as they're saying it, they had spelled Genghis Khan wrong.
Oh, I'm sure that's just a local translation of his name. This is the sort of game that even if I could play it with a controller, it doesn't look good as a fighting game. It doesn't have flash. It doesn't have good characters. It doesn't have good story. Has nothing redeeming, and you play it with the Kinect. What more could you possibly want?
Well, here's a fighting game that makes the Jump Shoujin fighting game, that most recent one, look good. So
that's the benefit of these games. They bump everything else up the rankings just by their very existence.
Yes. All right. Drum roll, please.
What could be worse than that? A fighting game with Kinect. Surely nothing could be worse than that.
In at number 1, with a score of 23.74%, Charlie's Angels. Come on. Doom, 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 doom. From Ubisoft again.
Charlie's Angels.
Yeah, and this is on the GameCube.
Can I make a confession here? Not just because there's 3 attractive women in the lead role, but I find the Charlie's Angels movies to be guilty pleasures.
They are. Shut your brain off and just enjoy the crazy mess.
Stupidly over the top.
Yes.
Kung fu action.
If you can call it that. With some kind of bad effects trying to rip off the Matrix at the time, I believe, especially with the first movie.
Who wouldn't?
And this game came out at the same time as the sequel, trying to get the money off of that. The sequel was even worse than the first Charlie's Angels
I don't
movie.
even think I could enjoy the sequel as a guilty pleasure.
But you know what? I'm still apprehensive about the reboot that's coming out either this year or next year with Charlie's Angels.
I didn't even know that. Why am I so not knowing about movie reboots? I didn't even know there was a new Men in Black coming out until this week.
Everything gets rebooted, honey. They can't think. It's very rare for original ideas to
Tune in next week for The Gaming Lovers episode 1 of our rebooted podcast.
Oh.
We're starting again.
Repiloting. So Charlie's Angels, the thing that I think that I find the most horrifying, the graphics in particular, their faces. Oh my word.
For starters, we watched a few gameplay clips of this game. You said the most horrifying thing. I didn't know which of the 6 things that came to my mind you were going to say. The faces do look horrific.
So bad. So bad. They make the faces that have been scanned in for GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64 look like perfect photographs.
And this came out on the Nintendo GameCube.
Yes, many years later. Terrible graphics, terrible job. There's a point where Cameron Diaz's character Natalie, I think that's her name, is in a swimsuit contest, and her hair looks like she's got a bald patch at the front, and her mouth is like this weird zigzag, and it's horrific, really. The other thing that's kind of strange is that, they're supposed to be undercover agents, but yet everywhere they go, people are beating them up. It's like, how did they figure out who they were?
Well, not only that, they may have drawn attention to themselves by trying to infiltrate places in bikinis.
Well, it makes sense in the whole swimsuit competition, but yes, everywhere else.
But yes, when
Lucy
you're
Liu shows up
in the shipping yard in a bikini.
I'm like, what? What? So it's like the weirdest fan service. And it just makes no logical sense whatsoever.
There's probably more fan service in this than there was in Leisure Suit Larry box office bust.
Probably was. Oh my goodness, yes. And look, I know the movies have a bit of that as well, but not every scene. They don't go walking down the street in those outfits. They have specific areas where they're infiltrating those areas, and yes, it's done clearly just to have that in the movie, but yeah, the game, it's just so bad.
The killer for me, not the soulless faces that their characters have, not the mindless combat of just mashing buttons, where the boss fights are easier than normal fights because there's only one-on-one encounters and not a mob of people. Not the fact that all the gameplay is following an arrow and beating people up and following the arrow and beating people up and following the arrow and beating people up. The characters run animation.
Oh,
the most basic
yes.
thing
So
of
bad.
almost any game. How do you even explain what that looks like?
It's so funny. Oh my goodness, I can't. I just go look it up because it's so funny.
It
Seriously.
looks like they're trying to run across hot coals barefoot at all times.
Yeah. They look kind of like they're being controlled by puppet strings a little too. It's awkward animation.
If you controlled the puppet strings by a remote control, which was actually controlled by you using a Kinect, then you've about got the amount of delicate movements that you would see in this game.
You know what I just thought of? In the game, like, the amount of times the camera, because the camera does like these sweeping shots, and it will keep looking back to behind the girls, but at a low angle where it looks like it's kind of staring at their butts. But the box art, the box art of the game has the photo, one of the poster photos where they've all got their backs.
That's what you're looking at for most of the game. Is that what you're saying?
Their butts. It was telling you this is what you're going to be staring at this whole time.
Wow.
Oh, and it really is just buttly.
Atrocious games. What is the worst game that you've played? I mean, I know you
Aside from Sonic
you
Boom.
played Sonic Boom this week. Prior to that, what's the worst game you can think of that you have played?
The Doritos Connect game was pretty bad.
That sounds amazing.
What else?
That was
do
the
you
one like
expect?
Wipeout, wasn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
And exhausting too, trying to keep up with that and all the hurdles that they throw at you, and it just didn't respond well. It got very frustrating. I think I'd have more fun playing that with ragdoll physics just with a controller. I've played a lot of bad mobile games.
Why does that not surprise me?
Well, I try stuff, and if it's free, it's free. Like, I'm very good with my self-control. I don't spend money on the in-app purchases.
I suppose that's true.
So if it's bad, like, I'm still happy to try it. If it looks fun and diverting for a little while, then I'll try it. If it's really bad, then it gets deleted right away.
For me, I probably have to give my worst game that I've ever played as Dino Crisis 3. Now, Dino Crisis was everything I loved because it was basically survival horror on Jurassic Park. Give me a Resident Evil game crossed with dinosaurs. You got a recipe that can't go wrong. By the time you reach Dino Crisis 3, you've got in space.
Space.
And the dinosaurs are now teleporting electric zombie dinosaurs, and you have a jetpack, and yeah, it's not anything like the original was. I had that game, and I was determined to beat it, to the point where I got a walkthrough printed out and still gave up because it was that bad. I've played bad games for achievements, but I don't think I've played anything as bad as Dino Crisis 3.
Oh, so many bad games. Let us know what the worst video game is that you have enjoyed. Let us know at thegaminglovers.com, or you can message us on social media. Share the anguish, I guess. Misery loves company.
We've all made mistakes, and potentially by letting the people know what you've played and you wish not on your enemies that anyone else would even play it, maybe you can save someone from making a grave error.
Absolutely. And when we talk about games that, like, you've hated, it's not so much like a personal preference thing as it is, like, just bad games to play mechanically and all those other things.
Yeah.
So it's not like if you really hate Fortnite, unfortunately, we can't say that that's a terrible game. Like, you might not enjoy it because
It's
of
just
preferences.
the people that are terrible. That's the problem. The game's fine.
But yeah, like, more mechanics, I guess.
Yeah.
So that's the specifics. Those are the qualifications. Let us know at thegaminglovers.com. In the meantime, I think I'll have a short break and then we'll get to our gaming goals. Our last leg before going overseas.
That's right. Let's wash off this disgusting bad game smell off of us with some delicious game smell after this.
Share the love. Follow us on Twitter at Brendo and Jem. That's BRENDOJEM.
Not much time left before we head overseas.
This sounds familiar.
Yeah, I know,
That
right?
was just a few months ago. We were in this holding pattern again, killing time until we go on a grand adventure.
Yep.
It's the hard
Oh,
thing.
what a hard life we live.
Sometimes it's difficult to decide which games to play if you know you can't finish them before you leave.
True.
So are you going to finish Mass Effect 3 before we leave?
Possibly. Sometimes I deliberately don't finish Mass Effect 3 because I don't I get depressed about the ending, so I'll do the Citadel DLC and I'll be like, yeah, I'll leave it here. Everyone's happy and having fun and alive.
Next time your Commander Shepard dies, just turn it off. That's your canonical ending.
Oh my
Killed in
goodness.
action.
But the thing is, not to brag, but I'm so good at Mass Effect now that doesn't happen very often.
Insanity difficulty it is. Challenge accepted.
No. But I am having a lot of fun. It's weird how there are still moments where I'm like, oh yeah, this is here. It's been long enough that it feels fresh again for me. So I'm just enjoying that and trying to think of what I should pack and take with me for when we head overseas. So I guess we should talk about that soon.
The benefit of living in Australia is that we're away from everyone else in the world. The bad thing is we're away from everyone else in the world. And to get anywhere takes like a 16-hour flight.
Yeah. So what are you going to play before then, though?
Before then, well, I have finished Sekiro. I might do some trophy hunting. That's the beautiful thing about when you have that timeline to game with, is that I do enjoy trophy hunting in that because I've already beaten the game.
Mm-hmm.
It's all good. Days Gone has just come out this week. My good buddy the Falcon's on that as we speak. And so I look forward to hearing from him if it's worthwhile or not. I do value his opinion. He has similar tastes to what I have in games like that. But I will definitely not be getting that the next week. So it's going to be pretty much Stardew Valley, a bit of trophy hunting in Sekiro, and maybe even some Persona dancing all night. Because after that concert, I got them tunes in my head again. Persona 5, dancing in starlight, dancing in moonlight, Persona 3, those games which we had and I didn't play much of. So I'm going to go back to those. Nice casual sessions can be done there beautifully.
There's actually been a bit of controversy with Days Gone as well being launched this past week.
Yeah.
Some kind of lukewarm, I guess, reactions to the game, and then developers and even voice actors feeling the need to kind of stand up for video games that come out broken.
Yeah.
You know, of saying, look, we want to finish it, but we don't always have control over it, and at the end of the day, if it gets released, it's a miracle, and trying to, like, defend the culture and the this, I guess, the cycle that we're stuck in.
Not every game can be perfect. We have guilty pleasures, which are well beneath the average line, but I think Days Gone still looks like it will be worth playing. It may not be the perfect game, but as long as it's not a fighting game with Kinect controls, I think it'll be fine.
I think it will tick boxes for, the fan base that it's hitting. It doesn't look terrible. It looks like it could be lots of fun. But yeah, people can come down really hard on games that kind of sit in that middle field where they're not perfect or where people like frothing at the mouth, it's amazing kind of games, but they're not like awful either. When they sit in that kind of happy middle, people are like, oh, they're crap because they're consist that they're
A
just,
7 out of 10 is
Yeah.
hot garbage.
it's like, that's so unfair.
I've been a Sonic fan. Maybe that's just why I have more generous love for the unappreciated, underachieving games. But I probably will play Days Gone. It does remind me a lot of State of Decay, which is a game that I did enjoy quite a bit. Another game that did not excel in the review world. But we will see. That's for another day, many days gone down the road.
Yes. If you are planning on playing Days Gone, or already have, and you're enjoying it or not enjoying it, let us know at thegaminglovers.com or Facebook or Twitter. We'd love to know, since we are not going to have the chance to play anything new for a little while. So keep us in the loop. And yeah, until next time, as we frantically...
Did you glitch out then? What happened?
Did it processing.
Oh no, I've glitched through the floor! Oh
no! We'll be back as we frantically pack. I've been Jem.
I've been glitching. And Brendo. Chowski, Brendo. Chowski.
Bye, Nara.
Thanks for listening to the Gaming Lovers podcast.
Oh, now I've glitched upside down.
For more episodes or to watch some live stream gaming, visit thegaminglovers.com.
I'm drowning in concrete.